I discovered my wife was unfaithful with her boss during what she said was a work trip. I divorced her, and now I'm taking care of our kids by myself. I never imagined I'd find myself writing this, but here I am, a 38-year-old man, married to Rose, 36, for the past 12 years. Together, we have two wonderful children, Victoria, 10, and Travis, 8. Until recently, I believed our life was quite fulfilling. Naturally, like any couple, we experienced our share of highs and lows, but nothing prepared me for the current ordeal. I work in IT at a tech company, while Rose is a marketer. We first crossed paths in college, dated for a couple of years, and tied the knot shortly after our graduation. Initially, life was blissful. We were young, in love, and eager to conquer the world side by side. We purchased our first home, welcomed our children into the world, and settled into what I perceived as a content life. However, the first signs of trouble emerged about a year ago when Rose started to seem distant. She was constantly on her phone, and her working hours extended late into the evening more often than not. Attributing this change to stress from a recent promotion at work, I assumed she was merely putting in extra effort to excel in her new role. To support her, I took on additional responsibilities with the kids and around the house, hoping that things would soon return to normal. Unfortunately, the opposite happened. The gap between us widened. Our exchanges became cursory, revolving around the kids or mundane household matters. Intimacy was sparse and felt obligatory, as if Rose were merely going through the motions. I attempted to address this several times, but my concerns were dismissed with excuses of tiredness or work stress. About a month ago, Rose announced a 2-week business trip to Europe. She described it as a significant career opportunity, with plans to visit multiple international offices and engage with clients to secure potential deals. I was initially doubtful. The duration seemed excessive, and such an extended trip was unprecedented for her. Despite my reservations, Rose reassured me that the trip was crucial for her career advancement, and I wanted to support her. On the eve of her departure, I noticed she was packing unusually glamorous attire for what was supposed to be a business trip: cocktail dresses and unfamiliar lingerie. When I questioned her about it, she defensively explained that she might need to attend formal events and wanted to be prepared. Reluctantly, I decided not to press the issue further, avoiding any conflict just before her departure. The initial days following her departure were hectic. Balancing my job and solo parenting was challenging, but I managed. Rose would call nightly to check in, although her updates were invariably brief. She seemed constantly hurried, citing impending meetings or fatigue as reasons to cut our conversations short. Suspicion crept in on the 4th night when Rose called later than usual. I could hear faint music and laughter in the background. Upon inquiry, she hastily mentioned she was at a work dinner and had stepped outside to speak to me. Her voice was slightly slurred, hinting at alcohol consumption, and the call ended abruptly when she claimed she needed to leave. Restless and uneasy, I found myself logging into our shared cloud account later that night, driven by a nagging feeling that something was amiss. The photos I discovered confirmed my worst fears. Instead of images from business meetings, there were numerous shots of Rose at popular tourist locations in Paris, dressed in the fancy clothes she had packed. She wasn't alone. Accompanying her was a handsome man in his mid-40s. Some photos showed them posing together at landmarks, while others captured intimate moments at romantic bistros, wine glasses in hand. The most damning evidence was a selfie of them kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. My hands trembled violently as I scrolled through each picture, each detail intensifying my heartbreak. There was no plausible denial. Rose was clearly enjoying a romantic escapade with another man. I refrained from confronting her immediately, partly out of shock, and partly because I wanted to collect more evidence. Over the following days, I scrutinized our phone logs and credit card statements, uncovering a trail of deceit. Text messages that spanned months, expenses for upscale dining, and hotel stays in our city painted a clear picture of an ongoing affair. This betrayal had unfolded right under my nose. I eventually discovered the identity of the man in the photos: Matthew, Rose's boss. Recently divorced and known for his flirtatious demeanor, I had met him on several occasions at company events. Although his presence always made me slightly uneasy, it never crossed my mind that he could be involved with my wife. Unable to bear the weight of this revelation for much longer, I confronted Rose by sending her a text accompanied by a photo of her with Matthew, coupled with a simple, urgent message: "We need to talk." Her response was immediate, a flurry of frantic texts pleading with me not to make any hasty decisions and promising explanations. I chose not to reply. Instead, I reached out to her parents and laid everything out for them. They were understandably shocked but offered their support. When Rose called, I let her message go to voicemail. She left a tearful apology, claiming that the situation wasn't as it appeared, that Matthew had pressured her, and that despite her error, her love for me remained unchanged. Her words didn't sway me. As I tended to our children in the following days, I grappled with a tumult of emotions: anger, betrayal, and bewilderment. Following a consultation with a lawyer, I was advised to meticulously document everything and maintain my residence to avoid any implications of abandonment should divorce proceedings arise. With Rose's return impending, I was torn over my next steps. Part of me wanted to vanish before she walked back through our door, but that option felt unjust to our children. They deserved stability and honesty. Ultimately, I decided to face the situation head-on. I arranged for the kids to stay with my parents to ensure they were shielded from any immediate conflict. The day Rose came back was like living in a daze. She entered our home appearing weary yet feigning normalcy, as though her trip had been purely business-related. However, the instant our eyes met, the facade crumbled. I asked her quietly, yet firmly, "How long?" Her composure dissolved, and she began to sob, unable to hide the truth any longer. Amid her tears, Rose confessed that the affair had been ongoing for 6 months. It began with late nights at the office and seemingly harmless flirtations. The turning point was a company party where Matthew kissed her, leading to an escalation in their relationship. As she recounted the entire distressing narrative, she explained how Matthew had pursued her with relentless attention and lavish gifts. She admitted to being flattered by the excitement and perceived danger of their liaison, convincing herself it was just a temporary fling that she could end whenever she chose. "I never intended for it to escalate this far," she pleaded, reaching for my hand, which I instinctively withdrew. "I love you. I love our family. This was a horrible mistake. Please, we can resolve this." As I stared at the woman I had loved for so many years, the mother of my children, I felt a chilling void, an emptiness where warmth and affection once resided. Quietly, I declared, "I want a divorce." Her pleas intensified, urging me to consider our children and the life we had built. "I'll do anything. Just give me another chance," she implored. However, my decision was irrevocable. The past week's reflections had solidified my resolve. The trust we once shared was irretrievably broken. The woman I loved, the life we built, it's all been tainted by deceit. "I'll be staying with my parents for the time being," I informed her, adding that I had already consulted a lawyer and that we would sort out the separation and custody details through legal channels. Despite her attempts to dissuade me, I had reached my limit. I picked up my pre-packed bag and left, her cries echoing behind me as I closed the door. The ensuing weeks at my parents' house were spent contemplating the pieces of my shattered life. The most heart-wrenching task was explaining the situation to our children. Rose and I agreed to do it together, gently telling them that we would no longer be living together, but reaffirming our unwavering love for them. Victoria, the elder, surprisingly grasped the gravity of the situation, asking if it was because Mommy had a boyfriend. Her question, born from overhearing snippets of our disputes, stunned us both. Travis, younger and more vulnerable, tearfully wondered if he was to blame, which pained me deeply. Meanwhile, work became another battleground. I found myself needing to take time off to manage the emotional and logistical turmoil. A month after I confronted Rose, she moved out. She found an apartment close by, making it easier for the kids to transition between our homes. We set up a temporary custody arrangement. The children stayed with me during the weekdays and spent weekends with her. It wasn't an ideal solution, but it was the best we could manage under the circumstances. As for Matthew, he faced repercussions as well. Once the affair was exposed, he was forced to resign from the company. The last I heard, he relocated to another state, trying to start fresh. Good riddance. Throughout all of this, I've been genuinely surprised by the overwhelming support I've received. My family has been amazing, stepping in to help with the kids and providing constant emotional backing. My friends have stuck by me, ensuring I wasn't left to stew in my thoughts alone. Even Rose's family has been supportive of me, much to her frustration. They made it clear they didn't condone her actions, and that brought me some comfort. It's been 3 months since that fateful discovery. The divorce process is in full swing, and we're working out the finer details of custody and dividing our assets. It's far from easy, but I'm taking it one day at a time. The kids are doing their best to adjust to the changes, though it's a lot for them to process. So here I am, 38, a single dad, and soon-to-be divorcee. It's not where I ever envisioned myself, but I remain optimistic about the future. If nothing else, this ordeal has shown me a strength I didn't know I had, and I'm determined to come out of this stronger and better. I'll provide an update if anything significant changes. Thank you for listening to my story. Update 1. It's been about 3 months since my last post, and a lot has changed. I thought I'd give everyone an update on where things stand now. Initially, Rose tried to contest the divorce, pleading that she had made a mistake and wanted to reconcile. But once she realized I wasn't going to change my mind, she shifted her strategy. Now she's fighting for a larger portion of our assets and seeking more custody of the kids. Her primary argument is that her affair was a temporary lapse in judgment and shouldn't erase the years she spent as a loving wife and mother. On top of that, she's tried to paint me as controlling, claiming that my emotional distance drove her to the affair. It's complete nonsense, but it's still draining to deal with. The most contentious issue has been the house. We bought it together early in our marriage, and we both want to keep it. I've argued that since I'm the primary caregiver during the school week, it would be less disruptive for the kids if I kept the house. It's a tough battle, but I'm standing my ground. Rose argued that she needed the house for when the kids are with her. We're still battling that out. As for custody, we're sticking with the temporary arrangement for now, kids with me during the week, and with Rose on weekends. However, she's pushing for 50-50 custody. Her lawyer is making the case that her work schedule has suddenly become more flexible, conveniently timed, right? Now she claims she can be more present for the kids. Speaking of work, there's been some drama there as well. Remember Matthew, Rose's boss from the affair? Well, it turns out he didn't just quietly resign and move away like I thought. He's been causing trouble. About a month ago, I received a frantic call from Rose. Apparently, Matthew had shown up at her new apartment, drunk and causing a scene. He was yelling about how she'd ruined his life and how she'd promised to leave me for him. Rose ended up calling the police, and Matthew was arrested for disorderly conduct. The whole incident shook her up badly. The next day, she called me again, apologizing for everything and admitting that the affair had been a huge mistake. She said Matthew had been pressuring her for months to leave me, and she was too weak to stand up to him. While part of me felt a flicker of sympathy for her, most of me just felt relief that I was no longer a part of that mess. The situation with Matthew did lead to one positive outcome. Rose finally agreed to file a restraining order against him. She had been hesitant before, not wanting to stir up any more trouble, especially at work, but this incident made her realize how unstable he really was. As for the kids, they're doing okay. Not great, but okay. Victoria, our 10-year-old, has been acting out at school. Her grades have dropped, and she got into a fight with another student who made a comment about her mom's boyfriend. Travis, who's 8, is still trying to make sense of everything. He's become very clingy, especially toward me. One particularly heartbreaking moment was when Travis asked me if Mommy didn't love us anymore since she chose to be with another man instead of us. Hearing him say that was devastating. I did my best to reassure him that Mommy still loved him deeply and explained that adult relationships are complicated and none of this was his fault. It was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. I'm not entirely sure how much of it he understood, but I hope it provided some comfort. There have been a few awkward encounters along the way. Just a few weeks ago, I bumped into Rose's sister at the grocery store. She seemed uneasy, trying to avoid me, but I managed to catch up with her. To my surprise, she apologized for Rose's actions and mentioned that the entire family was disappointed in her. She even hinted that this wasn't the first time Rose had been unfaithful, though she avoided going into detail. It left me questioning how well I truly knew the woman I'd been married to for 12 years. The divorce is set to be finalized in a few months. and I'll finally be able to start a new chapter in my life. So that's where things stand. I'm still taking it one day at a time, focusing on being the best dad I can be and slowly rebuilding my life. I'll post another update once the divorce is finalized or if anything major changes. Thank you again for all the support and advice. Your words have meant more to me than you could know. Update 2. Final update. Hey everyone. It's been almost a year since my initial post and about 6 months since my last update. I figured it was time for a final update to close this chapter of my life. First, the big news. The divorce is officially finalized. After months of negotiations, arguments, and compromises, it's over. I'm no longer a married man, and honestly, it's a strange feeling. The terms of the divorce weren't exactly what I had hoped for, but that's the nature of compromise. We ended up selling the house and splitting the proceeds. Neither of us got to keep it, which was tough, but it was the fairest solution. I've since bought a smaller home in the same school district so the kids wouldn't have to switch schools. Rose is renting an apartment nearby. As for custody, we agreed on a 60-40th split. The kids stay with me during the school week and every other weekend. Rose has them every other weekend and 2 weeknights for dinner. It's not a perfect arrangement, but so far, it's working. The kids seem to be adjusting, though there are still some difficult days. All in all, this experience has been challenging, but I'm beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel. I'm moving forward and focusing on creating a stable, loving environment for my children. Thank you again for all the support and encouragement throughout this journey. It's helped me more than you know. Speaking of the kids, I decided to get them into therapy, and honestly, they're doing much better. Victoria's grades have improved, and she's made some new friends at school. Travis still has his clingy moments, but he's opening up more in therapy and seems to be understanding the situation better. Of course, they both have moments of sadness or frustration about the divorce, but overall, they're resilient. I'm incredibly proud of how they're handling everything. As for Rose and me, we've managed to remain cordial. We're certainly not friends, and I don't expect we ever will be, but we're making co-parenting work without too much drama. Surprisingly, Rose is still with Matthew. After the affair came to light, they kept their relationship under wraps for a while, and I thought they had split up. But it turns out she took him back, and Matthew moved back from out of state. Seeing them together was a bit painful, but not nearly as much as I had anticipated. I guess that means I've truly moved on. There was one situation about a month ago that put our co-parenting relationship to the test. Rose wanted to introduce the kids to Matthew as her boyfriend, and I was strongly against it. I felt it was too soon and would only confuse them. We argued for days, eventually bringing our lawyers and the mediator into the conversation. Ultimately, we agreed to consult the kids' therapist, who advised waiting a bit longer. Rose wasn't thrilled, but she agreed to hold off for the time being. On my end, life has taken an interesting turn. I've been focusing on self-improvement. I've lost around 20 pounds, picked up reading again, and even enrolled in a cooking class. It's been refreshing to rediscover who I am outside of the confines of marriage. And yes, I've started dating again. It's nothing serious yet, but I've been on a few dates. Awkward and nerve-wracking at first, but also exciting. There's one woman, Erica, who I've been seeing for about a month. She's also divorced with a child, so she understands what I'm going through. We're taking it slow, but it's been nice to have someone to talk to who truly gets it. The first time I introduced Erica to the kids was quite an experience. We kept it casual, planning a quick meetup at a local park while the kids played. It went smoothly, and while we're not rushing anything, it feels good to have someone supportive in my life again. Victoria was polite but distant during our first meetup with Erica. Travis, on the other hand, had a full-blown meltdown. He cried, screamed for his mom, and even said he hated me for trying to replace her. It was absolutely heartbreaking. Erica was incredibly understanding, but I couldn't shake the guilt. We've had a few more meetups since then, and things have improved, though it's still very much a work in progress. There have definitely been tough moments along the way. The first holidays after the divorce were especially rough. Splitting up traditions, figuring out who gets the kids when, it was all painfully new. Thanksgiving was particularly hard. It was the first major holiday I spent without the kids, as they were with Rose. I went to my parents' house, but the absence of Victoria and Travis made it feel hollow. Christmas was better. We managed to agree on a schedule where the kids spent Christmas Eve with Rose and Christmas Day with me. Watching their faces light up as they opened their presents that morning was a reminder of why I'm fighting so hard to give them a stable and happy life, even if it looks different from the one we used to have. Reflecting on this entire experience, I can see how much I've grown. A year ago, I was broken, betrayed, and lost. Now I feel stronger, more confident. Don't get me wrong, I still have moments of doubt, but they're fewer and far less intense than before. So, I guess this is where my story ends, or rather, where a new chapter begins. Thank you all for the support, advice, and kind words you've offered throughout this journey. It's meant more to me than you can imagine. Here's to new beginnings and second chances. Wish me luck on this next step.